Hello, grade 5s. Welcome to solving one-step equations using multiplication and division. Last week, we put it all together and began to solve one-step equations using addition and subtraction. This week, we are going to focus on multiplication and division, and we will go over multiplication and then division. They're basically the same but slightly different. And when we are doing this, we are going to be writing these equations using the algebraic way. So you can see here, when I write the equation 3x equals 12, this x doesn't mean times, that is the variable, and it means 3 times a number is 12. I'm sure many of you already know what the answer is, that it is 4, but that is not what we are concerned about in grade 5. In grade 5, we are focusing on these steps. So step 1, write the equation. The second step is to isolate the variable. That means we want to get rid of this. We need to get rid of this 3. To get rid of the 3 and isolate the variable, to get it all alone, we need to do the inverse operation. The opposite of multiplying by 3 is to divide by 3. We have to remember whatever we do to one side, we must do to the other side so that we've balanced the equation. So the opposite is to divide by 3, so I'm going to use the algebraic way and I'm going to draw it like a fraction. So 3x divided by 3 equals 12 divided by 3. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to complete the math on one side of the equation with the variable. 3 divided by 3 is just 1. We don't need to write the 1 next to the x because 1 times any number is always that number. So we have x equals 12 divided by 3. Even though you can do both steps at once, we are only doing one step at a time. The next step is to complete the math on the other side of the equation, so 12 divided by 3, and write the answer as variable equals. So x equals 4. Why do I not need to write that 1 here? Because 1x is going to be the same thing, right? 1 times 4 is still 4. It doesn't matter what it is. It's always the same when you multiply by 1. So that's how we do it with multiplication. Let's have a look at division. Very similar. Step 1, exact same, right? The equation. Step 1 is the same for all algebraic equations. X divided by 5 equals 7. So something divided by 5 is 7. I know that most of you probably know what this is right away, but again, we are focusing on the steps. So the first thing I need to do is I need to isolate the variable, which means I want the letter all alone. I need to get rid of this 5. How do I get rid of the 5? Is to isolate the variable, I need to do the opposite operation. The opposite of dividing by 5 is to multiply by 5. And whatever I do to one side of the equation, I must do it to the other so that both sides remain balanced. So x divided by 5 times 5 equals 7 times 5. And you can see here I've written it in two different ways. You can either just put the number you're multiplying by in brackets next to it on both sides, or you could write times 5 times 5. It just gets a bit confusing when we have a variable as x as well as the multiplication symbol. Once I have done this, on the next line, I'm going to complete the math on one side of the equation with the variable. 5 divided by 5 is just 1. I don't need to write the 1 next to the x because anything times 1 is itself. So on the next line, I have x equals 7 times 5. And my last step is going to be to solve for x. 5 times 7, and write my answer as x equals, so x equals 35. I know this to be true because if I went back up here and I replaced this x with 35, 35 divided by 5 is 7. When you are solving these, you're going to need to use your strategy sheet as you go. You can write division and multiplication the algebraic way, or you can use the symbol you are comfortable with. However, all of the equations that you see will be written the algebraic way. It is important that you have your sheet with you so you can go through the steps and make sure you are not skipping a step. All right, let's have a look at solving one-step equations with multiplication and division. You should have your sheet with you. You can see I have my strategy sheet open. Mine just looks a little bit different because I only have the multiplication side up right now. That's because we're going to start with a multiplication example. So 1, 4n equals 24. That means 4 times a number is 24. Most of you probably know that 4 times 6 is 24 and the n is 6. Again, not what we're focused on. We are focusing on following the steps and making sure we record a new line for each step. So step 1 is to write the equation. Lucky for you, that's already done on your sheet. The next step is to isolate the variable. We want to get the letter all alone. To do this, we have to do those 2 steps we learned about last week. We need to do the inverse operation, and we need to balance the equation by doing the inverse operation on both sides of the equation. 4 times a number is 24, so we are looking at times 4. What is the opposite of multiplying by 4? It is to divide by 4. So I am going to divide both sides of the equation by 4. So 4n divided by 4 equals 24 divided by 4. So I now have 2 lines. On the next line, I'm going to do the next step. I'm going to complete the math on the side of the equation with the variable. So 4n divided by 4 is just 1n, and I don't need to write the 1 because 1 times any number is the same. So now I have n equals 24 divided by 4. And the last part is to complete the math on the other side. So I'm going to do this 24 divided by 4, and now I have n is 6. And I know this to be true because 4 times 6 is 24. Let's have a look at our division one now. So here I have n, and this line means divided by 3 is 5. So something, a number, divided by 3 is 5. Some of you, again, probably know right away because you know 5 times 3 is 15. But we are focusing on our steps. So step 1 is to write the equation, which has already been done for you. The next thing I want to do is I want to isolate this variable. I want to get the n all by itself so I can figure out what it is. How do I do that? I need to do the inverse operation, and to make sure it remains balanced, I need to do the inverse operation on both sides of my equation so they remain equal. The opposite of dividing by 3 is to times by 3. So I will times each side by 3. So a number divided by 3 times 3 equals 5 times 3. These sort of just cancel each other out. 3 divided by 3 is 1. The next step is to complete this side of the equation with the variable. So that leaves me with n equals 5 times 3. The last step is for me to complete the math on the other side. What is 5 times 3? N is 15. And now I am all done. That brings you to your work today. This is what your work looks like, 6 questions, and you have 4 lines. I realize now I probably should have given you some more lines because when you do the division, you need a bit more space. You could certainly use the back of the paper or you could just write a bit smaller, but you do need a new line for each step. So you should, including the equation, have a total of 4 lines when you are done. Please check your work as you go to make sure you are matching it up. We are looking for the steps that you have rather than just the answer. If you are confused, please come to our office hours today from 10 to 11, or tomorrow if you're doing this after 11. And alternatively, if you are finding it very hard to do this on your own, please choose option 2 and do the review of the work we've already covered in class. Good luck!